What's up everybody, I'm Jesse Showalter and welcome back to the series all about designing and coding a responsive landing page from start to finish. And today we're actually going to start focusing on the responsive nature of the site by making some initial responsive tweaks. That's going to take us about 95% of the way. I hope you guys are really excited to make this thing work on all device sizes. Let's get started. There's three main concepts that you need to know, in my opinion, when you're building a responsive site, and they are as follows. Number one, you have to be working on a fluid grid with fluid measurements. So however you want to set up a grid or establish a grid, you need to have some fluidity to it so that it can bend and stretch. The second main principle of a responsive site is media queries. If you don't know what a media query is, it's basically part of the CSS spec that allows us to say when the browser or the screen hits this designation, if the device is this orientation, if the screen is this wide, if the screen is this narrow, if it's using a retina screen or a normal screen, you can address all sorts of different situations. For this tutorial, we're going to be mainly using max size or min size and just addressing the size of the browser itself. And that leads us to the third most important basic part of responsive design, which is build things to work and fix them when they break. Don't depend on the traditional desktop, tablet, mobile kind of size as far as breakpoints go. Build it so it works as much as possible. Make it look good as much as possible, and where it breaks, fix it. Okay, so what I'm basically gonna do is just go down the page and take my browser here and stretch it out and back in and figure out where it's breaking and how we need to fix it. So let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna start with, again, we're going to skip the navigation. We're gonna start with what's wrong with the header. So let's just, all the way out on large screen, looks really good. And as we start scrolling in, it's still looking really good. We put some basic responsive nature to it, so that image of the phone is shrinking. It's 100% width as it goes until right about here we're having some problems, right? Like we're getting a really long view of the phone and that text starts becoming really unattractive, just like the width or like the set of it. So you can see that the width of that text is actually staying pretty nice in our design, but over here it's staying like a percentage of the browser window, and we want that to kind of like have a minimum width or a maximum width, okay, to kind of contain that. Also our phone and our entire header size is kind of messing up as well. So let's fix that, okay? We're gonna open up Atom and we're gonna come over to our page home because that's where we have our header specific stuff. If we were to build this out in a larger site, we would have probably a header partial. In our case, we just have this page specific template, so we're gonna work with that. Okay, we are going to write a media query where this thing starts breaking, and I think, you know, where it starts breaking is right about there. So we're gonna open up our dev tools and stretch things out a little bit. And we're gonna grab the development window here and we're gonna stretch it out and size it in. And when we feel like it breaks, I think like right there is still okay, but right there, I feel like it starts feeling funky. So that's around 675. Let's just call it 680 and we will, we'll just call it that. So we're gonna come into the header and let's drop a media query in. So we're gonna write, at media, we only wanna affect the screen and the max width of 680. When we do that, we can indent and we can change something drastically. We can say we want the background to be red. Boy, the poor color red just gets used as something atrocious, doesn't it? You can see that our developer tools are measuring the width, and as we get right down there to 680, it hits red. So now we know that we are actually affecting things correctly. What do we want to do? We don't want to make the background red. We want to shrink up the size or the height of the header, okay? So let's say height, and let's try 500 pixels. And we just need to give it a little bit of a space, and there we go. Looks pretty good, I think. As we keep squishing, we have something that looks pretty good. Now, I think there's a bigger issue here, which is this article is sized at 60%. That's the bigger issue. So we want to affect this article also. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take this media query that we wrote here, and we're just gonna copy it, come down into the article underneath, okay? And we are going to change the width. So let's go width out to 90% also. That's gonna give us a little bit more, there you go, a little bit more size there with the actual kind of like space, you know, the real estate that we're using on the mobile device. It's kind of crazy. We're doing some responsive kind of like imagery sizing and changing the way that things are formatted and the way that things are displayed with 4 lines of code. That's literally these 2 lines of code right here and these 2 lines of code right there. That's pretty sweet, okay? So that is the power of media queries. It's one of those few key items I mentioned at the start of the video that are necessary for a good responsive site. Media queries is one of them. So you're seeing it right in action right here. Okay, again, we're gonna handle the navigation in a further video, but I feel like that kind of takes care of the header. So it is a little bit taller than it is in our design. I feel like there's a little less of the phone showing and there's a little more space around the headline lockup. So we need to actually add a media query, a matching media query in both of these spaces. It's pretty nice, it's spaced out. You can imagine once we fix the padding up there inside of the navigation, everything's gonna line up and look really, really smooth. So that's nice. Okay, next section that needs some work is our features area. First off, I can tell that we need to fix that phone area, but we're gonna start with the features area. You can see I can scroll to the left and right, and it's breaking. When you're on mobile and you're able to scroll side to side and you're not supposed to, that's a bad thing. So we need to go in and do a little bit of CSS grid work here. So we're gonna close page home, and we're gonna open up features, and we can see that we are, let's see, where are we? We're displaying grid. And let's see, yep, the grid template columns are at 3. So let's actually just open up page home. Again, we're gonna copy our media query. Side note, I like this method of doing responsive design a little bit better. Instead of creating one like responsive style sheet or one section at the bottom where you're rewriting all of the CSS selectors, I like to just drop the media query in on the selectors that aren't working. When there's an actual break, I tend to just come in and insert a media query and fix when it comes to media queries. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna come in and just write media query right there, and we are tabbing in and we're saying our grid template columns, let's just say 1 and repeat, and let's see what that does. Bam! Immediately we have just single columns right there. So that's really, really nice. And I feel like though we need just a little bit of padding around our feature cards. So how would we get a little bit of padding? Let's look and see. Our cards are inside of a div called cards. They're also inside of a wrapper. So maybe this is where we could just test out fixing the wrapper instead, okay? So let's come into, where would that be at? That'd be in base probably, right? Let's write a media query over here on our base wrapper, and we will say width, and let's just start out with like 95%, and we'll see what happens, okay? It's gonna bring all the cards in, not quite enough. Let's go 90%, and let's compare that to the design, okay? So close our developer tools. I feel like that's pretty close. Now that does change the work that we had done over here in our headline, right? So, or in our header. So let's come back here and just see, maybe we can delete the article width change. Oh my goodness, no. Okay, so the article is at 60%. and maybe we want to go all the way up to 100%. We do, and here's why. So we've changed the wrapper. If you look over here at the base CSS, when it comes down to mobile, we were having this problem before, so let's just take that off. I'm going to comment it out by putting 2 slashes. You can see right there, look at the navigation up there in the top left of the site. It's butting up right against the sides of, you know, the browser window. That feels really uncomfortable. That feels crowded, right? And as we got down here, our cards were butting up against the edge as well. We want like just a little bit of breathing room. And so to do that, we dropped the wrapper from 100% to 90%, and you can see right in there, you're seeing a huge difference, okay? You're getting a little bit of time where it's rubbing. We might want to address that later and figure something out, but for now we can see when it hits down here, we might want to just change the actual size, the actual time when that happens from 600 to whenever it starts rubbing, right? Which would be right around 1100 pixels, because that's the size of our wrapper. So we could just kind of cheat it and say, hey, at around 1000 pixels, I want you to space everything in just a little bit. You could totally just like do away with this entire thing by saying 90% at all times, right? Then you can see, let's get rid of our developer tools. There's never a time when there's not space. That just takes away from our overall size of the grid, which is actually okay with me. So maybe we can just delete our media query. Man, that was like a lot of work. Not really, but I mean, there's some thought process that goes in how you want the site to interact. And I think that it's smart when you are kind of affecting the outermost wrapper that's kind of containing the grid. We just start from there. So note to self, make sure that you start there, okay? So we're gonna fix this discount area right now. Let's just come in here and see why maybe that is acting so funky, okay? I'm just gonna stretch this guy out and open up my developer tools. Insane height, 500 pixels, there's your issue, right? So we want the height to be auto, okay? So let's go back to features. Wow. Almost didn't see that. So the height is 500 pixels. So we need to drop our media query there. And we want to say height auto. Obviously, we want it to expand to the height of the content, and everything shows up beneath it. Now we have this issue. We're still having horizontal scroll issues because our discount area is a 2-column kind of guy. So we need to fix that thing as well. Okay, we're saying the offer is 40%. Okay, how do we fix that? Let's see, the discount layout is flex. The discount layout is flex. The image is there and the class is 40%. If we go 100%, that's an issue. The reason is because we've displayed things flex, we're getting kind of a weird side-by-side thing. So we need to come to here to our discount layout. That's what we need to affect, our discount layout. Okay, so we're gonna drop the media query in there. We're gonna say display block, why not? Boom. Our image, however, is displaying massive. So we need to fix that big time. Let's just, what happens if we write a temporary style of width 100%? There we go. Now it fits and we're not getting any, look at that, no horizontal scroll issues whatsoever. But we don't want all of the images. We just want a discount layout image, right? So I wonder what happens if we just drop the image tag in there and say width 100%. It's gonna refresh the browser. Over here, whoa, it gets really big, okay? So we are going to immediately copy that guy. And we're saying we're only now affecting the image when it becomes that size. So when it becomes like to a responsive size. So there it is, it's shrinking down now. and it's looking almost exactly like what we have there. Okay, so far so good. Let's troubleshoot this text area down here because that is funky. Okay, the offer is at 40% width. That's easy to fix. We're just gonna, again, drop the media query in right there, and we're gonna say width 100%, right? Because it still has that 90% wide margin. It's gonna line everything up, hopefully. Booyah, there it is, 90%. Squeeze that down. And you're wondering, why is my button trailing off into the download area? That's because download had a negative margin on the top of it. So we'll say margin top 0. Okay, we press save on that. Good. Okay, let's just give it a little bit of a margin top though when it goes responsive. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 70, not 754, sweet mama, just 75. Okay, great. That's looking pretty good. And the last thing we probably need to do is come into our discount area, and in the offer, when it hits 680 pixels, we want to just text align center to match our style there. And there it is, right? So we have the offer side by side with the phone. As it squeezes down, our wrapper has natural padding on it. So we're staying away from the edge of the browser window. As soon as it hits 680, right where we have troubles, right there, bam, we start resizing. Now, if we were smart, we'd look at discount and say, hey, this thing is width of 100, but let's give it a max width of maybe 400 pixels. Bam, it drops down. You can see the image there. Everything's center aligned, just like it is over here. When I get down really cramped, it looks exactly like our mock-up that we have over there, okay? So pretty good, so far so good. So we're gonna close discount and we're gonna open up the download section in the HTML, and we're gonna open up the CSS as well. Okay, so we already have our media query. We're gonna wanna look at our typography because we did a very specific thing. We made an H2 look like an H1, and now it's not responding to the resizing that we have in our kind of our basic thing here. So what we need to do is just kind of copy the style basically, which says H2 inside of your special H2. We need you to basically act like an H1. And that's just the nature of what we're doing here, which is customizing things. You know, we want it to semantically be an H2, not an H1, but we wanted it to be real big. Once they got down the page, that is kind of the main call to action to download. So we're kind of cheating the system a little bit there. So, okay, we want it to download. We don't need as much white space, I'll tell you that. So let's just download here, and let's change the padding because the padding is a bit excessive on the mobile. So I think a good thing to do if you're ever wondering how do I downsize things, just cut it in half. That's pretty easy. Let's open up our developer tools and see what's up with these buttons. So I'm just gonna drag the window over, and these buttons are kind of sitting on top of each other. They're A tags. There is no margin on top and bottom, but there is left and right. And if we added 20 pixels top and bottom, that would pretty much fix it. So we could just actually go with the 15, or we could lessen it and call it 10. Let's lessen it and call it 10, okay? So we're gonna come in here and just drop our media query there. And we can lessen it and say margin 10 pixels, 15 pixels, and that pretty much took care of it, just like that. So the gradient's actually a little bit different. I just noticed that we might actually be able to fix that really, really quickly by just saying background size cover. How about background position center? And that kind of brings, it centers, it positions that background image where we want it to fall as things are kind of shrinking down. Whereas initially we had it as we didn't have a position set, so it's staying anchored to the top and the left, right? So everything was kicking over to that very purpley color. This looks a little bit more closer to the design. I feel like people will be a little bit happier with that. Okay, I think for the most part, we've gotten the majority of the site pretty responsive safe. Navigation not included because that is a specific thing we're gonna do. But everything is sizing really, really well. We're gonna come back and take care of images, navigation, and I think that's pretty much it for that. But at this point, the site works about 95% of the time. As you shrink it down, you can see it goes really smoothly and just drops into, you know, the responsive mode that it should. There's a lot more that you could do, and there's a lot more that we will do in the following episodes where we talk about responsive images, we talk about a responsive slide out navigation, and then after that, we're actually gonna get into a little bit of JavaScript. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. If you are, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. So make sure to leave those there. I hope you guys are having an amazing week. I hope you're designing amazing things. I hope you're making amazing things. And I hope you're responding to the needs when they arise. I'll see you in the next one.